2,000 years ago, the most powerful man on earth placed a tax on public toilets. His own son was embarrassed by it. His enemies mocked him for it. And yet today, in cities across Europe, public urinals still carry that emperor's name, the strangest monument any ruler has ever received. But hidden inside this bizarre little tax is one of the most quietly influential ideas in the history of money. An idea so durable that you can still hear it, word for word, in boardrooms and parliaments today. Money doesn't stink. To understand how an empire came to tax urine, and why that decision echoes through your daily life right now, in ways you have almost certainly never noticed, you first have to understand something that sounds impossible. In ancient Rome, urine wasn't waste. It was one of the most valuable industrial chemicals on the planet. Picture a Roman street on an ordinary morning. Outside the workshops, at the corners where foot traffic runs thickest, stand large clay jars, placed there deliberately, like public donation boxes. Passers-by stop and use them. And here is the part that defies belief. Those jars are not a public service. They are a harvest, because when the jars fill, workers collect them and haul the contents away, not to be dumped, but to be used. Sold, fought over. Somebody's entire business depends on what's inside. Why? Chemistry. Stale urine breaks down into ammonia, and ammonia is one of history's great cleaning agents. It cuts grease, lifts dirt, and bleaches fabric. And in a city of 1 million people where status was broadcast by the brilliance of your toga, an entire industry existed to keep wool white. The fullers, their workshops, the Fulonicae, were the dry cleaners and textile finishers of the Roman world, and their essential raw material, the thing they simply could not operate without, flowed out of the Roman population every single day, free of charge. Step inside a fullery and the scene gets stranger still. Woolen garments are heaped into vats of water mixed with aged urine, and workers stand in those vats for hours, treading the cloth with their bare feet, human washing machines, marching in place all day in the sharp reek of ammonia. Tanners used urine too to soften hides. Farmers wanted it for the fields. Some Romans and their neighbors mocked them mercilessly for it, even used it to whiten their teeth. The poet Catullus wrote wickedly about a rival famous for exactly that. However you feel reading this, understand what it meant economically. A great city was producing a valuable industrial fluid around the clock, and an entire supply chain existed to capture it. Now, wherever a river of value flows, sooner or later, a government will arrive on its banks holding a bucket. But the story of how Rome finally taxed that river begins not with greed. It begins with a catastrophe. The year the empire nearly tore itself apart. In the year 68, the Emperor Nero, who, tellingly, had already experimented with squeezing revenue from the urine trade, was declared an enemy of the state and driven to suicide. What followed was chaos on a scale Rome had never experienced. In a single year, 4 different men seized the imperial throne. Armies marched on the capital. Emperors were murdered in the streets and in their camps. The heart of the empire, the capital itself, went up in flames. Historians simply call it the Year of the 4 Emperors. And when the smoke finally cleared, the last man standing was a gruff, plain-spoken soldier from a modest family of tax collectors and moneylenders, Vespasian. Vespasian had won an empire, but look closer at what he was actually holding. The treasury was a crater. Civil war had devoured everything. Rome's finances were so wrecked that Vespasian openly declared he needed a sum so colossal, 40,000 million sesterces by the ancient account, that people could barely comprehend the number. The city center was ash. The legions needed paying, and an emperor who cannot pay his soldiers, as the previous 12 months had just demonstrated 4 times in a row, does not remain emperor for long. So Vespasian did what the son of a tax collector does. He taxed everything he could find. He revoked exemptions, resurrected old levies, invented new ones, and somewhere in that desperate sweep, his eye landed on those humble clay jars on the street corners and on the fullers hauling away their pungent treasure. The urine trade was real commerce. Real commerce could be taxed, and so it was. The Vectigal Urinae, the urine tax. The buyers of Rome's most unglamorous commodity would now pay the state for the privilege. The reaction was exactly what you'd expect: snickering, disgust. And the objection came from inside the palace itself, from Vespasian's own son and heir, Titus, a polished war hero who found the whole thing beneath the dignity of the empire. Titus complained to his father that it was disgusting to raise money from urine. And what happened next became one of the most famous scenes in Roman history, recorded by the biographer Suetonius, who worked in the imperial archives. Vespasian didn't argue. He reached for a coin from the first payment of the new tax and held it up to his son's nose. "Does it smell?" he asked. Titus had to admit, no. "And yet," Vespasian said, "it comes from urine." 2,000 years later, we've compressed his point into 3 words that have never gone out of circulation. Pecunia non olet. Money doesn't stink. Hold that coin in your mind for a second, because it's doing more work than it appears to. Vespasian wasn't just teasing his son. He was stating a doctrine, one that governments had circled for centuries but rarely said out loud. Revenue has no memory. Once value is converted into money, the money carries no trace of where it came from, which means no source of value is too lowly, too embarrassing, or too absurd to tax. It is, in its way, the purest statement of fiscal realism ever uttered. And it worked, because here's what that despised little tax helped make possible. With the treasury refilling, from the urine levy, yes, and from 100 larger streams, including the spoils of war in Judea, Vespasian began to rebuild. He restored the burned capital. He stabilized the currency and the frontiers. And in the heart of Rome, on the drained lake of Nero's private pleasure palace, he began pouring the foundations of a gift to the Roman people, a colossal stone amphitheater, the largest the world had ever seen. He never lived to finish it. His son Titus, the same Titus who once wrinkled his nose at his father's tax, inaugurated it. Today, we call it the Colosseum. The most famous ruin on earth stands in part on the principle that money doesn't stink. And Vespasian himself, history gave him a payback both cruel and perfect. He became one of Rome's most respected emperors, the man who proved the empire could be stabilized by competence instead of bloodline. But the urine tax followed him across the centuries like a loyal dog. When France built public street urinals in the 1800s, Parisians nicknamed them Vespasiennes. In Italy, they became Vespasiennes. Nearly 2,000 years of empires, kings, and republics have risen and fallen since, and Europe still writes this emperor's name with a smirk on its public toilets. No ruler in history has a stranger memorial. Few have a more honest one. Now, you might be tempted to file this away as an amusing footnote. Don't, because Vespasian's coin trick quietly became the operating system of every treasury on earth, and once you see it, you cannot stop seeing it. Follow the thread forward. Governments taxed windows and people bricked them shut. They taxed beards, hats, playing cards, candles, bricks, wallpaper. Always the same logic. Wherever value flows, place a hand in the stream and let the money launder its own origins. Today, the doctrine simply wears better clothes. States collect enormous revenue from tobacco, alcohol, gambling, and other vices they officially discourage, condemning the behavior with one hand and banking its proceeds with the other. Every one of those budgets is Vespasian's coin, held under a nation's nose. Does it smell? No? Then it spends. But there's a second thread in this story, and it's the one that leads directly to you. Think about what Roman urine actually was: a waste product, something ordinary people gave off constantly, without effort, without thought, and without payment, collected in convenient public receptacles, hauled away by businesses that refined it into profit until it became valuable enough that the state itself demanded a cut. Now ask yourself, what do you give off constantly, without effort, without thought, and without payment? Every tap, every scroll, every search, every pause of your thumb over a screen. The technology industry even has a name for it: data exhaust, the waste product of simply living a modern life. And just like Rome, an entire economy of collectors has quietly positioned its jars on the street corners of your day. Free apps, free platforms, free services, conveniently placed, happily emptied, hauled off and refined into one of the most valuable commodities of this century. And governments, right on schedule, have begun arriving at the riverbank with their buckets, taxing the digital giants built on it. 2,000 years later, the Vectigal Urinae is alive and thriving. Only the liquid has changed. So here is the paradigm shift to walk away with. Vespasian's lesson was never really about urine, and it was never really about Rome. It was this: value hides in the things we're embarrassed to look at, and whoever overcomes that embarrassment first collects. The Fullers got rich on what Rome flushed away. The emperor rebuilt a broken superpower on it. And today, some of the wealthiest corporations in human history have been built almost entirely on the byproduct you produce every waking hour and have never once thought to value. The next time you tap accept on a free app or walk past a public toilet in Paris still nicknamed for a Roman emperor, remember the old soldier holding a coin under his son's nose. He was right, and he has been right for 2,000 years. Money doesn't stink, but that was never the real question. The real question: then and now, is much simpler, and it's the one Rome's citizens never thought to ask as they filled those jars on the corner for free. If your waste is worth this much to everyone else, what exactly are you getting for it?